Perfect. Looks like we got a few folks trickling in. So for the folks that are here, it looks like we're already 100, 150. So yeah, folks are jumping in for sure. For everybody on here, we're just going to give it just another minute or two as a bunch of folks are trickling in just to make sure that nobody misses. In the meantime, I know we'll get into the introduction side of things and talk definitely a little bit more about who Josh Kirchner is and what we're going to be chatting today through. All sorts of cool stuff glassing. But in the meantime, Josh, I know you just got back from a successful bear hunt. So, for the folks listening and myself, because we haven't even really talked much since, what state, what was that hunt all about?
Oh man, it was a good one. Did Idaho spring bear, big gnarly backpack hunt, just like it should be. And packed in on a Tuesday, did a whole bunch of vert, got up to camp, glass that evening, didn't see any bears. I've been to this spot before, usually see quite a bit of bears there. Saw my first mountain goat. That was pretty cool. Especially because I just put in for my first mountain goat tag not too long ago, which obviously means I'm going to draw a mountain goat tag now.
Absolutely. It's guaranteed.
So yeah, went to sleep. Next morning, woke up, spotted a bear, pretty much a gray light, kind of going back to his bed, strawberry blonde, beautiful looking bear. Not a giant bear, but definitely super pretty. And took a look at him for a bit and then decided we wanted to go set up on him. We had a whole bunch of weather coming in right after that though. So we went and pre-gamed some water, dropped down did 800 foot to get water, came back up, bombed over to this bear, did another 2,000 right there, got set up. Bear stayed bedded all day, ended up getting up at 4:30, just like he should, and made a 500-yard shot on him. And thankfully he dropped right there on the spot, got down and got him taken care of. We shot that bear 5 p.m. and we didn't get back to camp until midnight that night. Knee deep snow, in the dark. Basically dodged an avalanche right to the right of us, like coming up in the pitch black. So ran out of water. It was an adventure. So got packed out the next day. It was a pretty short hunt.
Perfect. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties on trying to unmute myself there a second. No, that's super cool, Josh. I'm excited to see more photos from that hunt. Looked like a great bear. And that's one really cool thing about spring hunts is just getting out in the spring. Like, it's a really cool time. Montana, right out my window right now, is super green. It just turned green a couple of weeks ago. And I'm itching to get out. I guarantee there's bears, from eyesight of my house here that are probably out cruising the hillsides right now. So congrats on the bear. Awesome. And yeah, we'll kind of kick this thing off, and just I'll run through a couple things and then we'll get going. Obviously, we're going to be talking all about glassing tonight. I personally can't think of anybody better than Mr. Josh here to chat through that with. So I know everybody's going to learn a lot, myself included. Just a couple reminders. You are muted, your video is not showing, so don't worry about that for the folks on the call. And then as far as the questions go, at the end, Josh and I are going to answer a bunch of questions. So make sure that you're using the Q&A function, not the chat at the bottom of the screen. Again, throw those questions that you have in the Q&A. The chat is super good. Let us know where you're tuning in from, banter back and forth, that type of thing. But for the questions, we'll be checking there and answering those toward the end here. So with that, let's go through a little bit of an agenda. So we will learn a little bit about who Josh is and why he is, in my opinion, very, very qualified to teach this. And then we'll dive into finding glassing locations, talking about the right optics for the specific hunt, different techniques of glassing. A lot of, so many people ask this question, like, how long should I spend at this glassing point or that glassing point? So We'll talk about some time allocation and then get into the giveaway and Q&A. So with that, Josh, would you mind just kind of teeing it off, letting us know a little bit about you, your backstory, what you do professionally, and just maybe a brief overview of the hunts that you go on?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ben. So yeah, name's Josh Kirchner. I live down in Arizona. 37 years old. I am a husband and father. Dad got me into hunting when I was real young. Went on my first hunt when I was 8 years old, and I just, it was like the coolest thing ever, out there seeing animals and stuff like that. So from that point forth, hunting to me was always this like annual deer camp type of thing, which was great. I look forward to it every single year. When I got into my early 20s, though, I really just got obsessed with it. And I was like, man, I really want to learn a lot more about this. I want to be successful as much as I can, on a regular basis. So I really started diving into more of the nitty gritty of hunting and trying to learn the stuff that is beneath the surface, to try to push success more. Through that, like when I started doing that, I came up with the idea of starting a blog to kind of serve as an online diary for myself, to kind of, just for me to kind of like look back on, and kind of revisit some of my adventures and maybe learn from my mistakes. I had no idea anybody was reading it. Apparently there was people reading it though, and started getting some messages from editors, some emails from people asking me, hey, would you write this story? Would you write this story? Which is how I got started freelance writing in the outdoor industry. And that just kind of snowballed. Writing kind of took over a big portion of my life. And it got to the point where I didn't have time for my regular job, actually, So photography leaked into that, because I needed photos for articles and stuff. And it gave me a love for imagery. And through that, I kind of, bumped into video and started trying to tell stories visually after that. So that is that's what I do professionally now. Like I am a full-time writer, photographer, filmmaker in the hunting industry. I wrote a book a couple years back, that really helped out with that whole thing. But yeah, and so the majority of all of my hunting, like Dylan was saying, the majority of all of my hunting is glassing based down here in the desert in Arizona. We have a lot of wide open country. Yes, we have thick timbered areas and stuff like that, but the brunt of what we do down here is all glassing. We live down here with the Coues deer, and with that species, you're living and dying behind glass. So I have a lot of hours behind binoculars behind me, whether it's glassing for deer, bears, elk, whatever. That's really how I'm doing most of my hunting. So
Yeah, for sure. Especially, I know you touched on it, but that country you live in and hunt, like I have not experienced that myself. I keep wanting to come down and do that archery coos hunt, but from what I've seen on the films and just talking to you and other folks that have done it, it is, if you're not good at glassing, your odds of being successful on that hunt are very, very, very low, lower than what they typically are. So yeah, just with that alone, I'm really interested to dive in and kind of pick your brain and learn from you as well. Kind of kicking it off, the first thing we're going to chat through is finding the perfect location. The perfect location might not exist, but finding good, plausible glassing locations. We're going to talk mostly about e-scouting through this. So Josh, I'll kind of let you take it away, and then I'll jump back in once we start showing the screenshots there.
yeah, so the things that I'm looking for when I'm trying to e-scout out areas for glassing is, you need country that's open, right? Like if things are too timbered, you don't have visibility. right? So you need to, using satellite imagery is a game changer for that. You can see these things from aerial view, okay, and really tell if you're going to be able to have a visual of the landscape. Once I kind of figure that out, my preferred like kind of process in that is staying high. Okay. Gaining elevation and looking across and down is much more effective to me than staying down and looking up. The reason for that is because of vegetation. Like if you think about it, if you're down on the bottom and you're looking up, you're trying to look up through the bases of vegetation. This could be grass. Okay, it could be tall grass. You think about that, and you're not getting a full picture. Whereas if you took that same hillside and you were up looking down into the grass, now you can see. Now you can actually see if something's laying down there. Whereas if you're down beneath, I'm not saying you're not going to see something if you're down low, but your chances are much higher if you gain elevation with that. So which is where things like using 3D comes in right there to really be able to see like the topography of how the land lays out, you know. So what I like to do is like I'll drop a pin like on a something like a cone peak. Does that make sense? Like you're on a peak like this, you can be on this peak which gives you 360 degrees of view. Okay. So jumping into your onX and going on the top of that and using something like your Terrain X, you can get up there, go into 3D, and you can see literally your view from that point. Okay, rotate the map around, zoom in, zoom out, whatever you want to do, you're going to be able to see all that right from your computer, which is absolutely a game changer. Okay, because you can only tell so much from topo lines, right? Um, Proofing a glass, you still have to proof glassing spots, in my opinion, but using tools like that, the Terrain X and the viewshed and stuff, is just, it just gets you one more step closer to really dialing in how to find these glassing spots. So along with that, you know, I think like what direction you're glassing makes a big deal, you know. So again, you know, like let's say we're talking about Coues deer. Okay, Coues deer, the things I'm looking for in the morning, I need to be looking towards the east. Okay, well, I should say I should be looking at east faces, so I'm actually looking towards the west. Okay, or looking at south faces, which means I'm looking towards the north. Okay, so having those two in mind, within the Terrain X tool, I found this out earlier this year. You can kind of pare that down and select what faces you want to be highlighted on the map. Okay, which really helps you cut down a lot of other country, and let you get a real quick visual of what you actually do need to see. The reason why I'm focusing on an east face or a south face is because in the morning, the sun comes up in the east and it sets in the west, right? Well, it comes up in the east, meaning that the east face gets the sun. Okay. So, which means that stuff like deer are going to pop in the sunlight, is particularly in the early season when they have like red coats on them. So I really try to key in on east faces because of that. South faces is kind of the same deal. Sunlight's going to hit them. A lot of feed tends to be on south faces. And then after that, I kind of try to switch things up. If I haven't seen anything, I try to switch things up to north faces. And the reason being is because those are thicker. So we're going to get into this in a little bit, but like um choosing a route, like making a glassing route, I think is really important. And I think it keeps you productive throughout the day. So keeping that in mind, I will choose a route that caters to what I need to see throughout the day. Okay, not just, okay, this is, you know, this is a good spot for the morning, but I don't have anything to work on after that. I don't really like that setup because then I'm going to have to burn time going somewhere else. Okay, so something where I have like a long ridge to work, I can look at east faces, south faces from this peak here. If I don't see anything, I can take this knife ridge over, glass off the backside, be looking at north faces. That's an ideal type of setup in my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's all really good stuff. And I mean, it's one of those things you just don't really think about it. I've certainly been there where, it's the morning or the evening and you find yourself where you want to glass into, you're staring straight into the sun. And
Yeah.
it's so unproductive. So just some thought ahead of times, once in a while, I'm sure you're going to be stuck in that position based on, maybe the wind direction and where an animal is located, just to put yourself in that position to be looking into the sun. But if you can, those are all really good things to consider. So we will jump into a few map examples, kind of explain what we're looking at here, and then carry on. Almost we almost wanted to switch over to onX and actually show the map interactive, but the problem with that is we could be here for 3.5 hours just playing around with cool stuff in there. So we kept it to a few screenshots we'll chat through and then get into the other glassing information. So this one here, and I'll let Josh kind of break it down much further. I found an area, complete random area on the map with a pretty good ridge system. And for me, this is what I would be looking for with the topo. Um, Something that I can gain some elevation. So from the road on the bottom left-hand side to that first glassing point, that blue line there is a line that I drew. And if you look on the left-hand side, so I clicked that. And if you look on the left-hand side, it shows you some information about that. So 1.2 mile distance. It looks like you start at about 7,500 feet. You end at 84. So about 1,000 foot of gain there. Well, 942 exactly. It says in the bottom left there. A little bit of elevation loss along the way. So essentially, that would be a potential hike for me to get up to that ridge system. And then what I did from there is I traced with that red dotted line all of kind of the top of the ridge. Now, some of those do come down, lose some elevation going out to finger ridges or go up. But essentially, if you look and you read the topo, that's pretty much the ridge system, and it would be fairly easy to get up there and then follow that ridge system. The last thing you want to do is climb 1,000 feet of vertical to have to drop 1,000 feet and then climb another 800 to your next glassing point. So it's just not effective. It's not efficient. You're going to be putting scent down in there where you should be glassing. And unless you're in extremely good shape, you're going to be kind of burning yourself out. So I usually mark those areas. You can do that with the line tool. You can free draw them. You can do the line tool and kind of just piece it all together. And then for me, when I get up there and I'm using my phone at that point, it's just a really good reminder almost. It takes that, studying the map in the moment out of the equation because you've already laid it out. It's like, hey, I get to that first glassing point, nothing there. I'm going to, follow that line and deviate where I need to go to the next glassing point. And it really just kind of, for me, helps paint a better picture of how to be efficient when bouncing from one point to the next. So anything else, Josh, that you want to add, just kind of looking at this demo?
Yeah, I just want to point out how solid like this is for a full day of hunting, like this setup that you have here. You come up that blue line to the first waypoint there, and then you follow your line and you get to a fork. If you go left and you get to that first glassing spot right there, you have exactly what I'm talking about. You have an east face right there that you can see down into right there. You also have a small basin right beneath you. All right. And then if you don't see anything there, it's just exactly what I was saying. You follow your red line over, and you can glass a south face right across the way from that. Don't see anything there. Throughout the middle of the day, you can go up, go north, take that hook to get to that upper right hand glassing spot, and now you're looking back at a north face. So like having a plan like that, that's exactly what I was talking about, man. Like having that laid out ahead of time, like know what you're doing. Like it's cool to kind of free ball it and kind of wander. Like I'm a wanderer, that's fine, but having a system like this is going to make you a much more efficient glasser, in my opinion, because you're going to be able to cross areas off the map with a little more confidence.
Yeah, and for me, I started doing this a couple of years ago, and I started doing this in areas that I knew really, really well. So areas that I had grown up hunting, and we've got glassing points that I know if I hike to that point up there, I've got a great view. We glass from that point, from this point, but I never really put it together on the map. So we were being inefficient in hunting it, and it was honestly like it was pretty eye-opening and incredible when I actually did this to all the good ridge systems in the area on the map
Hmm.
and marked potential points and got there. And this was an area that I've personally hunted for, I don't know, 5, 6 years before then. And the year that I broke all that out and went there, I felt so much more efficient. I felt like I wasn't wasting any time. I wasn't overexerting myself. Like I had a plan going into it. And no joke, because of this, I shot one of my best bucks. Like it was just, maybe I would have found that deer otherwise, but just the way that it all planned out, it was like, yep, I'm going to go here. Nope, that didn't work. I gave it 45 minutes. I'm going to go here, and turned up a really good deer. So I do think this is worthwhile to do it like this. And then we'll move on. I'll show you some other cool stuff. One other thing I wanted to say is everybody else has different systems. What I typically do is if I mark a waypoint and put it yellow, for me, that means I have not been there yet. So all these are potential glassing points. Looks like it'd be a good spot, but I haven't been there. So I might get there, love it. I'll change that waypoint to red or whatever color you want to use, to indicate, okay, I've been there, I've checked it out. It's a good glassing point. You might get to one of those points and the sun comes up and you're like, I just can't see what I wanted to see. Move even 50 yards down the ridge and have a great view. Well, then just move that waypoint to that location, change it red. Now you know it's good to go. So for me, when I look at maps and I see yellow, it means, okay, it's e-scouted, but it's not verified yet. So I wanted to throw that in there
Right.
real quick.
I think another like a valuable tool right there too, um, is to actually use the line distance tool in between those pins. So because on a map, like you're looking at this like little screen, right? And it's like everything
Yep.
seems close, but when you get out there, everything is much farther away. So knowing, oh, okay, this is a half mile away, you kind of know what you're getting into. You can see the elevation gain and loss there with the hike. So you kind of can plan better when getting to glassing spots. Another thing that I like to do on that with the line distance tool is I'll use the line distance tool from the waypoint to like the opposing hillside, okay, like mid hill or something like that. So I know how far away that is. Okay. Cause if I'm like rifle hunting, knowing that I'm going to hike up to this glassing spot and that hill over there is 457 yards away tells me, oh, cool, I can potentially shoot right from this glassing spot. You know what I mean? So just having all of that figured out ahead of time, I think it's just aids in efficiency.
For sure, exactly. And so this, what this is looking at is that exact same thing. So the cool thing about it is once you look at topo and kind of map it all out roughly, or however much detail and time you want to spend on it. So like then I switched it to aerial and 3D and just kind of spun the map around. So up at the very top, it might be a little difficult to see, but you can see that blue line. That's actually the hike in, and then that red dotted line is the ridge systems with the waypoint. So you map it out and you're like, yeah, this looks potentially like a good ridge system, good glassing points. We'll then flip it over to 3D. You can exaggerate the 3D up a little bit if it doesn't have a ton of 3D in the area to really make that 3D pop, and look at it from this and then fine tune it, move those waypoints to slightly different locations. You can move all sorts of stuff at that point. So this is just showing the exact same thing in a different view. Next, we're going to jump into a couple of cool Terrain X things. This is a new feature only available on the computer for now. And this is what Josh was talking about. So on the left-hand side, you can filter out an area and say, okay, I only want to see south-facing slopes. Right here, I have it set so it's showing pretty much southern-facing slopes and eastern-facing slopes. And then up at the top, you can change the degree of incline there, and then at the bottom, elevation band. So I have it set there from anywhere from 95 to 9,500 feet to 11,500 feet. So if you notice the very top of the mountains there are not highlighted, that's because they're above 11.5. So as you play around with that, it highlights the areas on the map that you are selecting. So you can kind of hone in on some cool stuff there. And then switching over to the next one, Josh, I'll let you kind of talk about this real quick.
Yeah, this is pretty cool. Okay, sorry, the screen's
Yep,
changed there.
jump back.
Viewshed is pretty cool, man. I talked about this in a recent e-scouting for black bear video I did with onX, and it's incredibly useful for this. So you can set, like what Dylan's saying here, you can set like your elevation band of like what you want to see. And this viewshed tool here, it shows you like, what is that? Is that 2 mile, Dylan? The ring there?
Yeah, I believe. Yep, the first ring is a mile, and then 2 miles, you can kind of see it's tucked back behind there.
Yeah, so you can see like, okay, like this is like within a mile of me, which is, I think, is also just incredibly useful. Like country, like I was saying, it looks smaller on the map than it is when you actually get there. I really like this tool because for the whole bear hunt thing that I was talking about, elevation is incredibly important with the spring bear thing. So like, oh yeah, I don't want to be above snow line because that's completely useless, right? So setting that elevation to, like, say, I don't know, between 2,000 and 5,000 feet, which is kind of like what I like to look for in spring bear habitat. You can do that with this Terrain X, and it just blacks out, but not blacks out, but it highlights everything that you want to see. So, and you can zoom into this on the dot. Can you do that, Dylan, right there from the computer? Or
No, it's just a screenshot right here. But yeah,
okay,
I mean,
okay.
you can zoom in, you can change the angle. It's essentially just 3D map.
Yeah, you can use 3D in it, and I think it's incredibly useful, man. Um, I found it very, very helpful with scouting for the spring bear hunt.
Yeah, and really what the view shed part of it does is, and this is pretty new for us, so we do have some changes, some improvements to make, and we want some feedback on it. But essentially what the view shed part does is you filter all that stuff out, and then so the very center there, where kind of the bullseye or center of rings are, if you will, it's highlighting what you can see from that location. So
Right.
you would move the mouse around, and essentially wherever your mouse is, it highlights what you can see. So for glassing points, I mean, it's perfect because if you want to see up at the very head end of a specific basin, or even if you're in some lower elevation stuff and you want to see this whole drawn out coulee, you can go into this and put your mouse there with the view shed turned on, and see, okay, I can see all of it, or I can only see the southern portion. Try and move it around and figure out, where you can see the entire thing from. So some pretty cool new technology that, yeah, I'm excited to put it to use this fall for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
Moving
no doubt, man.
forward here.
That's a game changer, dude.
Yeah, no, it's super cool. So yeah, Josh, I'll kind of kick it over to you, let you talk about picking the right tools for the task. And I know we had talked about this ahead of time as we were kind of prepping for this a little bit. And like we had mentioned, that the right tool is the tool that you have. So by no means are we advocating for you to go out and spend, thousands of dollars on all this new equipment. If you have one pair of 10x42s, that's obviously the right tool. But we did want to go through and break out, some of the maybe most popular or well-rounded. And if you do have multiple different sets or a spotting scope and a few other tools to your disposal, when the right time is to pull those out. So with that, Josh, I'll kind of let you jam through this slide here.
Yeah, so optics are kind of a rabbit hole. Okay, so you can have either optics for very specific things, okay, and then more well-rounded optics. I think the majority of folks out there are going to want optics that are more well-rounded, because you want to kind of have like this one optic that does it all, instead of having 8 different binoculars for 8 different hunts, right? Like if you got the money to do that, cool, go ahead, good on you. But most of us don't. So So in terms of binoculars, like magnifications, in my opinion, like the most versatile magnification of a binocular is a 10 by 42. It gives you a wide field of view, but it's also enough punch to reach out and really see something when you want a glass from a tripod. Also, back up, you can freehand with 10 by 42s. It's a well-rounded optic that I think can do a whole lot of things. Now, you need to take into consideration the country that you're hunting in when you're talking about like magnifications. If you're hunting in country that is vast, you're looking for, you're looking 2 miles away. Okay, maybe you do want something like a 15, right? Or add a spotting scope into the mix to be able to really see that stuff. So everybody's a little bit different in what they need, and what they want. I think you need to take into consideration your goals as well. If you're like a new hunter and you're sitting there and you're like, man, I just want to shoot a legal buck. You don't really need a 85 millimeter spot and scope. If you want it, by all means go ahead, but to get you in the field, the most important thing here, I think, to keep in mind is what's going to get you in the field hunting, right? And so if you're looking for your first pair of binoculars, especially, I would say get a 10 by 42. I would also say get a rangefinder, so that would be like the nucleus of your optic setup. Okay, 10 by 42 rangefinder, and get a tripod. All right. Spotting scopes are kind of like, some people like to carry spotting scopes. Some people like to carry a second pair of binoculars that's like a 15 or an 18 power. It's really personal preference. I also think it matters on what you're looking for. Like, for instance, if you need a ton of punch, like for coos deer are real small, or sheep hunting, like, and you're looking at, you need to count like rings on horns. You need something that's really going to reach out there, right? So an 85 millimeter, that's going to be awesome. For a spotting scope, like a do-it-all type of spotting scope, I think like Vortex has this small one that's an 11 by 33. That thing's awesome, man, and it's going to let you see what you need to see. If you're an inch counter, I might say go with a 65 millimeter at least, so you can really like get in there and see how big antlers are and stuff. Thick country, I think, also is something to keep in mind. Like, if you're glassing from far away and you need something to really glass into dense vegetation, like here in Arizona, we have a lot of what's called scrub oak. All right, so it's this like real dense brush that deer, bears, they like to bed down in. All right, you can take a spotting scope and really zone in on that stuff and look for like that eyeball, right, or that antler moving around. But if you're not too concerned about that, you're not dealing with that, I think just a 10 by 42 binocular is gonna do it for you. In terms of angled versus straight, with the spotting scopes, I think so. Here's the deal. Like, I like angled. I think it's comfortable to sit down and look down into the spotting scope. I like that. The downside of angled, to me, okay, is target acquisition. All right, it's much harder if you see something from far away with your binoculars. It's much harder to then put your spotting scope on there and then find that animal with that angled spotting scope. It just is. You get used to it after a while, but it's personal preference. Straight spotting scopes, it's like right away, man. Like, put the straight spotter on there, you're looking at pretty much exactly what you're looking at through your binoculars. Straight spotting scopes also fit better in a backpack. They don't have that angled eye on them, so keep that in mind. Looking uphill and downhill, that's another thing to keep in mind with angled versus straight. Looking uphill is much easier with an angled spotting scope. Especially you're sitting down, you can really angle that spotter up and you're just looking down. Your neck isn't getting all crinked up from trying to look up through a straight spotter. Looking downhill is a little harder with an angled spotter, right? Because you need to get over it, or you can turn the the angled portion and look through the side. But it just like some people don't like that because of the target acquisition thing, because it feels like you're looking this way, but you're actually looking this way. So
Yeah.
yeah, angled versus straight, I like them both. I have both, but it's personal preference really.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll touch on that super quick. So I have an angled right now and I missed my straight. Mostly
so
for what you just said, target acquisition. Like there's been a few times where, you know, a nice mule deer buck has gone up over a ridge and I'm like frantically throwing my binoculars and grabbing my spotting scope to see what he is before he disappears a mile and a half away or something. And that target acquisition to me is more important than a little bit of comfortability because for me, I don't have hours at a time behind my spotting scope. Like that's just not how I use them. Like once I pick
right.
something up with my binos, I'll grab my spotter on select hunts to see, okay, what is that deer? Is he a mature 4 point? Is he a 2-year-old deer? Like, you know, trying to figure that out. So for me, just that 2 cents. One question I did have though, Josh, that a lot of folks might is 65 versus 85 spotting scopes, for example. Is that are you going to get a lot of different light transmission? So what I've always been told growing up is if you get the 85 or the bigger one, it's gonna be better in low light. Is that pretty true? Is that like not so much with today's technology and the optics, or you know, is it worth me, and I'm using me as an example, is it worth somebody carrying an 85 millimeter spotter, big heavy spotting scope for that last 5 minutes of light, or is the 65 going to do just fine?
So to me, I think that battle is more like technology is great these days. The whole low light thing. I think I would not buy an 85 millimeter just for the last bit of light. I just wouldn't. I would buy an 85 millimeter for the extra zoom, for the extra punch that you get from that spotting scope. Um, do you get a little more light? Yeah, sure, you do. You know,
Yeah.
you do. But like, will the 65 give you enough light to see what you need? I think yeah, I think it does.
Cool. No, that totally makes sense. Cool. So glassing setups. Do you want to kind of dive into tripods, tripod heads? I threw trekking pole in there as well, kind of last minute because I personally grab a trekking pole pretty often, especially if I don't have a tripod. Even if I do have a tripod sometimes, like just throwing my optic on top of a trekking pole and having that, it's just more maneuverable to me. I can put it in kind of more obscure I don't know, angles and things like that than I can with
Hmm.
a tripod. So a lot of times what I'll do is just grab a trekking pole and just kind of hug the trekking pole with my binos
Hmm.
and just use it like that. And then if I need to, grab the tripod. But anyways, do you want to talk real quick about tripods, heads, and then yeah, we already kind of talked about choosing the correct tool for the job at the bottom there. So we'll chat through tripods, tripod heads, and then kind of kick it off to the next.
Yeah, the trekking pole thing, I think that's awesome for getting like a quick look at stuff. I'll do the same thing with the cam of my bow. I use like the cam of my bow to rest my binoculars on to get it, and it helps immensely to really stabilize your view. I've also like grabbed my hat before, like grab my hat to help stabilize the view. Um, the tripod though, man, is just really an absolute game changer for glassing. Pairing a tripod with a good fluid head, okay? It has to be a fluid head. All right, seriously, like if you're gonna like invest in a fluid head, just trust me. Because if you don't have a fluid head, the thing that's going to happen is as you're grid searching, which we're going to go through grid searching here in a bit, I believe. But when you're grid searching, you're like moving your optics, right? What we're trying to do is spot movement, right? We're trying to spot things that are out of place, spot the tail flick. If you don't have a fluid head and your head goes like this and it sticks, you are not going to be nearly as effective as if you would have a fluid head. The head that I like, I run a Saray VA5. It's super fluid. I've used Manfrotto's too. Those are really good. Outdoorsman's makes a good one as well. But those fluid heads are an absolute game changer. So absolutely invest in those. Tripods, I like to keep tripods. So I do a lot of backpack hunting. So I like to keep tripods fairly small and try to keep them lightweight. So I do kind of err towards like carbon tripods. Um, I personally like the twist locks. That's just my own personal preference. I think they're easier to use, in my opinion. I feel like they don't break as easy. Um, and putting a nice fluid head on there, especially, and then make sure you have a good arm on there too. And something else to note on the arm is the direction of the arm. Okay. This is personal preference, okay? Do what feels best for you, but this is my opinion on the glassing arm. Having the glassing arm away from you keeps it out of your face, right? You can change the angle on it and stuff like that, but to me, like being like this, I don't like it just doesn't. I don't know, man. It just doesn't feel right to me, like doing that. Having it away from you lets you kind of like control it away from you like that, and then the glassing arm isn't like going into your neck, right? So I think you have more variability of movement like that. So get a good tripod, get a good tripod head. The trekking pole thing is a fantastic point. I will, like, when I get to a glassing spot, I don't tripod up right away. I don't. I will hit the spots that are real easy right off the bat fast, and something like the tripod, or sorry, the trekking pole, or the leaning your binoculars on the cam of your bow. That's what I'm doing when I first get to a glassing spot, to kind of try to pick out the easy areas first. Then I'll sit down, put the tripod on, and really start scanning throughout the area and trying to pick out the things that don't want to be seen.
Yep. No, good stuff. And like I said, we kind of talked through the bottom there. One note I do want to say is reference that e-scouting when if you do have, let's say, a big heavy spotting scope and so on and so forth, reference that e-scouting and do those things like the line tools and see what elevation you're going to be gaining and losing. And, look at the area, because if you're gaining 1,000 feet right off the bat and you're going up into an area that isn't really conducive for a spotting scope, don't bring your spotting scope. I mean, it's
Yeah,
only a pretty heavy paperweight at that point. So, look
right.
at the terrain, look at your e-scouting, look at the country you're going into. And, I know some folks that take the spotting scope wherever they go, and sometimes it pays off. But for me personally, like if I'm archery elk hunting, I am probably not bringing a spotting scope, because I know if it's a legal bull or, even nothing that big, like we eat elk. I'm not incredibly picky when it comes to elk. Like if there's a bull over there, I'm going that way. For mule deer, I might bring my spotting scope just because I might want to see, okay, is that a 2-year-old buck on his way up, or is that a 5-year-old mature deer that I'm interested in hiking that 2 miles over there to go try and put a stock on? So reference that e-scouting and use the right tools where you can there. So I'll let you take it away with some techniques.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I literally just mentioned this, but right when I get to a glassing spot, I'm freehanding right off the bat, partly because I'm antsy. Okay. Like I just want to see all the good spots right off the bat. So, um, the other thing I'll do though, aside from that, is to not look through the binoculars. Look with your eyes. See if you can see stuff right off the bat. Because I think I like the tendency with binoculars is like you have this optic that can let you see really far away, right? So your first instinct is to look really far away, but you're not looking close. There could be a deer 150 yards below you, but if you just look over them, you're never going to notice them, right? So take the time to look in front of you first. Do a quick scan with your eyes. Then I'll freehand with the binoculars, look around in all the spots where I think a deer should be, right? If we're talking about deer hunting, like where around look at edge habitat. You know what I mean? Like look along edges and stuff. Look in little cuts that are super green where deer might be feeding. Like if we're talking early season, okay. Look in those areas first that are obvious. Freehanding. Then after that, if I'm like satisfied with that, then I will sit down after I'm a little bit more relaxed. Okay. And then I'll mount up on the tripod. Um, when I mount up on the tripod, um, I like to look. Some of this country is very big, right? It's very large and it's kind of overwhelming. Oh my gosh, I have to look at all of this, right? So I like to break country up into sections. Okay, whether that's by maybe like I'm going to look at this face first, right? And then like once I hit that cut, there's a cut here, and then I'll focus on this face after I take a break or something like that. You know what I mean? Don't try to look at everything at once. Okay, you by doing that, by breaking it down like that, you're going to look at things more thoroughly. Okay, you're going to spend more time in these areas, and the best way that I found to do that is by grid searching. Which is really where that fluid pan head comes in handy. Okay, so what I like to do, like, I don't know if there's a right way to do this, like I do them both, but like you can either grid search from like sideways, left to right, or go up and down, whatever feels right to you. The point is, what you're trying to do is you're just trying to completely cover, like if we're talking about a box, right? You're just trying to completely cover that box with your optics and know for sure that you've covered all of that, right? That's what we're trying to do here, to not leave a stone unturned. Through doing that though, especially if the country is a little more dense, I will stop. Okay, I'm not constantly moving with the optic. I'm not doing that. Okay, I'll stop and then I'll grid search within my view. Okay, by stopping and grid searching within the view that you have, you're opening yourself up even more to seeing movement. Okay, because if the optic is still, movement is going to pop like that, right? So I think that's incredibly useful, especially when you're looking for stuff bedded. Like when deer, for instance, when they're on their feet, they're fairly easy to see when they're out in the open feeding. But if they're bedded, man, you better take the time to really grind through that and really look at these small areas. So I'll grid search within my view. Once I'm done with that, I'll pan over. Okay, now I'm going to do it again and grid search through that. And I will do that throughout all the country in front of me. And what you're looking for, okay, I think one of the biggest mistakes I feel like newer hunters make is they are looking for a whole deer, like, which sometimes that happens, right? Like sometimes it happens, you see a deer standing out there in the open, but more times than not, really what you're trying to look for is you're trying to look for irregularities in the landscape. Okay, you're trying to look for these things that kind of break the flow of the natural land in front of you. These are things like texture, color, like horizontal lines. Like a horizontal line is would be like the back of a deer, okay, or any animal for that matter, a bear, an elk, whatever. If you're looking for elk, you're looking for the color of elk, right? Look for that color. Don't spend time looking for a whole animal, because this is what's going to really let you see those things that don't want to be seen. Okay, so when you're looking through the brush, you know what? That looks like the color of an elk in this little hole right here. Stop your binoculars on there and just stare at that thing. You know what I mean? Because sooner or later you might see a bull turn his head, right? Whereas if you were looking for a whole animal, you would have totally gone over that. Things like fur and stuff like that is another thing that pops, in my opinion. Sunlight glistens off of fur. It does. Particularly, like bears, for instance. I really like hunting burns for bears. The problem with that is there's a whole bunch of bear stumps, as I call them. There's black stumps that, like, oh, that's a bear. Nope, that's just a burnt stump. So looking for the texture of the fur, that's the giveaway. Especially if a bear's bedded, he's not moving around a whole lot. That's the thing that's gonna really give that away. And I promise you, like, texture of fur looks completely different than the texture of bark. All right, so pay attention to those little things, and you're gonna be finding stuff in no time.
For sure. And to your point there, like we have a lot of bear stumps up here where I'm at as well. And for some reason
Yeah,
though, when you are glassing and you do come across a bear, there's once in a while you'll see one be like, ah, that looks a little different or whatever, and it turns out to be a bear. But I would say for me, most of the time you're like glassing and you have all these bear stumps that make you stop and look and wonder, but then it's just a stump. But the second you hit a bear, it's like bear. Like you don't, there's no
right.
question. Like you're not, the majority of the time you can just tell the difference. So keying in on
Yeah,
that is super important. And I mean, even just last week up in Montana, we were looking for elk sheds and we glassed up a bunch of them. And even in some like dead timber where there's a lot of sticks on the ground, you know, what I was finding, it was kind of by accident, but I found them based on like how the sun was reflecting off of it. You know, how the
yep,
sun hits
yep,
an antler is going to be different than how it hits a stick right next to it. So, you know, it'd be easy to get caught up and look at every stick on the ground. But like if you just kind of go through and glass and find the one that the sun is really shining or glistening off of, it does stand out. So I think that's a really key thing is looking at the irregularities and just even if you're glassing something and you're like, that just something looks strange about that. Like even if it's not a color, not a texture, nothing exactly, but you just go by and you're like, there's something off about that location. Odds are,
right.
you know, it's because something is there causing that. So yeah,
Yep.
really, really good stuff. Um, time allocation. What do you got?
So, this has a lot to do. This is a huge question, right? It's like, oh, well, how long do I spend at a glassing spot? Well, I think there's some variables here. Okay, so if you, I think a huge thing is if you know animals are already there, right? And what I mean by that is like, do you have experience hunting the area? You know, are you coming in like were you hunting it and what I like were you hunting it yesterday or were you hunting it last year? Like have you seen animals here before? Which provides a little bit more confidence, right? When you're sitting down and glassing. It'll help you put more time into an area because you're like, no, this is proven, right? So um that's a big thing for me. Like I've got spots that I go to where I'm like, I know if I don't see a deer here this evening, there's no deer here. Like knowing that's just comes with experience. But another thing is, and I'll get into like how long to stay there in general here in a second. But another thing is though, when you're sitting there on your glassing spot, like what can you see? Right? If you can see a ton of stuff, all right, some dense vegetation mixed in there, a lot of areas for an animal to hide, to me that deserves a little more time, right? It deserves a little more time to look thoroughly through. If stuff is like super open, there's like one tree there, let's move on. You know what I mean? Like you're gonna see what's there pretty fast. um if it's real dense, okay, and I'm talking like real dense, like maybe like little slots of openings, like little pocket parks throughout a hill, um, I would suggest kind of moving and changing your angle, like maybe every even 30 minutes, you know what I mean, to really try to take advantage of the best times of day to hunt. And maybe even every 15 minutes, honestly, like depending on how thick things are. Because you really like, especially during certain times of year, like animal movement, like especially when it's hotter, is very confined. You only have, like in August here, you only have an hour of good hunting in the morning and an hour of good hunting in the evening, right? Here down here where I'm from, where it's real hot. So taking full advantage of that is super important to really know what's in front of you. The time of year is another thing to really pay attention to. Like if we're talking during the rut, okay, dude, like you can see a buck at any time during the day. You know what I mean? Like, so staying in a glassing spot for a longer period of time, that could do you well. I'd say stay there for at least an hour. A general rule for me is like if I haven't been somewhere before and I pick out a ridge system like Dylan laid out earlier, I like to stay in each one of those spots for about an hour. Okay. And if I'm not seeing anything by then, then, you know, I'll pop smoke and I'll move somewhere else. Okay. So, but like there's variables, like there's like, you know, the species I think is species dependent as well. Like, you know, like to revert back to the bear thing, this is like an evening thing mostly, you know. So spending an evening and a morning, if I spend an evening and a morning somewhere at a glassing spot and I haven't seen a bear, I'm going to go somewhere else. That's just what I'm going to do. So the we talked about this a little bit earlier, but in terms of like the glassing route, location versus time of day, you want to really line that out to where you can be looking where you need to be looking throughout the day. Okay, so like I said earlier, like in the morning you want to be looking in general at south and east facing slopes, and then after that revert to the shade, which means, okay, you need to be looking, this is very uncomfortable, okay, you need to be looking into the sun. Okay, guys will argue with me about this. They've argued with me about this in the past, but that's what you need to be doing. Because if you're looking into the sun, it means you're looking into the shade. Okay, and that is where animals are going to be. So, what I like, get creative. Okay, like I've been like this with binoculars. I'll put my hand out like this and block the sun so I can see into the shade where I'm glassing. That's where critters are going to be. Like, where would you want to be? Like in the middle of the day when it's hot, you want to be in the shade, right? So make sure you're looking into the shade. And in general, in the evening, that's where animals are going to pop up because they're getting up from their beds. This means that you're going to be have to looking into the sun, you know. So lastly, down here it says glass where you can hunt. I think that this is dependent on where you are in your hunt. Okay, if you're like at a point where you have no idea where anything is, I think that you should keep kind of bouncing around until you find what you're looking for. But if you've seen some animals, you know what I mean, I think the best practice here is to glass where you can put yourself in striking distance of that animal. Okay, particularly if it's the end of your hunt, man, like you're trying to make something happen sitting there on the glassing knob. It doesn't do you any good knowing, oh, I'm going to leave tomorrow in the morning, but there's a deer 3 miles away. That doesn't do you any well. So keep that in mind. Try to set yourself up for success, you know, depending on what time of day it is. In the evening, I really like to try to set up where I can kill something right from where I'm sitting that doesn't involve a big stalk. If it's the morning, it's totally fine if the thing is miles away. It really is, you know, because you have the time to get around and make the big play and do the whole thing. But end of day, I really like trying to set up for a shot.
Yeah, no, that all makes sense. Like you said, I mean, if you got one day left, there's no sense glassing 2 days away from you type situation. So good
Yeah.
stuff. Cool. So we'll post this link here in the chat a couple of times. So Vortex was nice enough to send us a pair of their Razor 10x42 binos. It's the set that I personally have, and I absolutely love them. Super, super compact, really clear. I've looked through quite a few pairs of binoculars and love these. So we are going to be giving away a pair thanks to Vortex. Takes 2 seconds to sign up. Your odds are pretty good. It's an expensive piece of glass there. So get signed up. Again, we'll throw the link in the chat, and that pair of binos will be going home with somebody on the call. Also, if you're interested in more master classes, we've got some cool stuff coming up. We're always adding new stuff. I'm sure we'll do more down the line with Josh, maybe about backpack hunting and all sorts of other really cool stuff. We'll also throw this link in here. If you're interested in a masterclass, just sign up. Even if you can't make it, we'll email you out a copy of it after the fact. And then all of these get uploaded to YouTube. Most all of them get uploaded to YouTube after the fact. So even this one, if you want to send it to a buddy or reference it, you know, a week from now, a month from now, just search on our YouTube. Should be able to find it right there. So with that being said, We have a ton of really, really good questions. I was just kind of sifting through on the other side of things. So I will stop sharing. We'll answer some questions for 15 minutes here or so. The good part, I was skimming through most of the questions, and I would say the majority of them got answered in some way, shape, or form throughout what Josh was just talking about there. So that is a good part, but we'll ask Josh a couple of them here. So let's see here. We covered this one, but it did bring up a pretty good point. So this question here is 8x42 or 10x42. Essentially, this individual said the 8x42s seem clearer and brighter even at long distances. I mean, it's a good point. It's something to consider because I do agree with you. 10x42s are very, very well rounded, but 8 sometimes do come off a little bit clearer. They're lighter. So kind of talk through that real quick. I think a lot of it has to do with where the type of hunting you're, where are you hunting? Is it closer stuff? Are you looking 2 miles? But yeah, 8s versus 10s.
Yeah. So eights, in my opinion, the king of freehand binoculars, right? Like it's a fantastic magnification, and you're right, they do tend to be clearer. I think they're great if you're an archery elk hunter, man, if that's your thing, you put a pair of 8s on your chest, man, because that's gonna come in a big handy. I big handy. I just made that up, Dylan.
I like it.
What I like to do in thick areas like that when you're archery elk hunting is I like to kind of still hunt as I'm going, and sometimes 10s are a little too much, right? It's a little too much. 12s are certainly too much for dense timber. So I think to really like more directly answer your question, I think it really depends on what you're hunting, man, and like what kind of country you're in. If you want to hunt high country mule deer, I don't think 8s are a good idea. I just don't. You can if you want, like do whatever you want, but if you have 8s and you're going high country mule deer hunting, you better have a 65 millimeter or something in your backpack, spot and scope, so you can see, because it's just bigger country, man. I think you need to, if you can have the optic reflect the country that you're in, I think that's going to pay huge.
For sure. Yeah, as I said, I mean, you answered a ton of these, so I won't reiterate the same questions that have already been answered, but this is a pretty good one because when I was in Colorado this year, kind of ran into this, not quite to this extent, I'm guessing, but there was areas that I was like, I don't even know how I would begin to glass this stuff. So this question here, what's your approach to glassing a flatter area with primarily juniper trees? They threw out Unit 10 in Arizona specifically, if possible, but just like big junipers, flatter country. I remember even in Colorado this year on a mule deer hunt, driving through some of that country, and it's like unless you can get way above it, I was like, I feel like we're wasting our time hunting this country. But I know there's some units that's all there is. So how would you go about that?
Yeah, so something real popular down here. I got a couple friends that are real diehard desert mule deer hunters, and they hang out in the flats of the desert. Okay, the way that these guys are glassing these deer up is by, I mean, there might be a mountain 3 miles away. Okay, they're gonna go up on that mountain, and they're gonna do something like, instead of, they're not using 10s, they're going to use like basically, I don't know exactly, big eyes is what we call them, like basically two spotting scopes put together to really see super far away. Okay, so they can look through all that flat stuff. All right, and that's how they're spotting bucks in places like Unit 10, man, where it's a real thick juniper. Here's the thing, sometimes glassing is not a practical way of hunting. You can't force your way to glass an area, right? What I've seen guys do in flat country though, I've seen guys bring cranes into areas and lift themselves up and elevate themselves above the country. I've seen people do that. I've seen guys like stand on the top of their trucks. Okay, like I know down in Mexico, people will drive like old 2 tracks elevated up on the back of a truck glassing. That's just how they do that stuff. But sometimes you're just not going to be able to glass stuff. That's just how it is, you know. So you could apply the same thing I said about the desert to the junipers though. Like if there's a mountain way far away and you've got the means to have like a pair of big eyes with you, that's if you are die hard on glassing that, that's what I would do.
Yeah, and then once you find them, make dang sure you got it pinpointed, and you know,
Oh,
because I'm sure once you get down there, it's like, where were all those bucks hanging out yesterday when we were 3 miles away? So like, you know, use the line
yeah.
distance tool, use waypoints, track. You know, what I'll do a lot of times, even with bears around here, is I'll mark where I think the bear is on the map. Do all
Yep.
my things, range it, look at the map, look at the all sorts of stuff, and I'll mark it, and then I'll pass my phone to my buddy and be like, or have them do the same thing, and then you compare notes. And you know, a lot of times it's in the same spot, and you're like, sweet, let's go get after it. But if I do it and he's doing it, or and we come up with something different, it's like, okay, let's sit and like let's talk about this. Let's have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So make sure you know where that's at before you drop down in there. Another really good question here. I've ran into this quite a bit, even in Montana, but in a more humid area or just in any humid area, how do you recommend keeping your glass from collecting moisture, fogging? Have you cracked the code on that? Is there anything you can do?
You know what, I haven't cracked the code on that. Sometimes it's just something you got to deal with, you know what I mean? Like sometimes early morning when you're breathing, you'll fog up your glass just from breathing, you know. And all I can say about that is have a lens cloth with you, you know, and use it,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah, I
Yeah.
yeah, I wish I had a
I've
better answer for you on that one.
I've tried some of the anti-fog wipes and stuff, and like I don't even think they work personally. You know, maybe they work for a little bit, but one tip that I will give is, especially if you're in a wall tent with a stove or an A tent with a stove, leave your optics outside. Leave your gun outside.
Hmm.
Like, you know, if you need to come in and like, you know, dry off your gun, get it warm, whatever, but then put it outside. So in the morning when you wake up, it's like already acclimated. One thing I've done is I've left all my optics inside. It's nice and cozy. You got the wall tent stove ripping, and then you go out in the morning and it's like it just seems like it's way, way worse. So that's one
Yeah.
thing that I've kind of learned over the years is if you do have a stove, if you're backpack hunting with a stove, I think, you know, dry your stuff out if you need to, but then don't leave it next to a stove all night and then go out and 0 degree temperature in the morning.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, also keep in mind, like just spirit of full candor here, like where I live, it's not that humid. So I really
Yeah.
don't deal with a whole lot of humidity down here. Like sometimes it gets humid in August, but it's never been so humid that I'm like, dang it, my binoculars keep fogging up. Like I just haven't really dealt with that.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, Eric left a comment here. It said anti-fog for scuba diving goggles might work. So honestly,
Oh,
that might
cool.
be worth, and it looks like somebody threw a link in there to something. So I know I'm gonna check that out. Because yeah, I'm guessing scuba divers probably don't want their goggles fogging up, so they probably have some pretty good products for that. Good stuff. Well, we'll answer a couple more. Yeah, we'll post that link again for the giveaway here in just a second into the chat. And then again at the end here, but we covered this one, but I think it's really important. What is better? Is it better to remove your actually, I'm going to jump to a different one real quick. Is it better to remove your eyeglasses or keep them on when looking through binos? I've always had contacts. I recently got LASIK.
Mhm.
Um, Absolute game changer. If you are thinking about it, it is worth the money, especially for glassing and dry eyes and all sorts of different stuff. But I don't know, Josh, if do you have glasses or anything? Do you have any experience with that?
I don't have any experience with glasses, man. Yeah, all I can say about that is I know that guys using glasses oftentimes, you know, something we didn't cover, and this is totally personal preference, but like eye cups out or eye cups in, down. The eye cups down is where it's at apparently for people with glasses on. And I actually prefer, like I don't wear glasses. I prefer to glass with the eye cups down, as I the reason being for that is I feel like it just gives a little bit wider field of view. It might be totally in my head, but I don't get this this tunnel vision look like when the eye cups are out, you're kind of looking through a tunnel almost. So I prefer to glass with the eye cups down, which is what I've heard it works the best with glasses.
I agree. Nothing annoys me more than when somebody hands me a pair of binoculars and their eye cups are all the way out. I don't know
There's
why I always use mine all the way in now, and the field of view is so much better. I think it's so much more comfortable. That is one thing. Like growing up, they were always out because that's how you glass.
yeah.
If people on this call have not actually given it a fair shake to put those eye cups all the way in and try it like that, like do it, because once I did for a couple hunts, I don't think I'll ever go back. One other cool thing that just came to my mind when you were talking through that is I use, man, I think Field Optics makes them or something, but they go on my binos and they're like a little rubber piece that fold into the side. And
Yep.
it is an absolute game changer. If the sun's on my right side, I'll only usually put that side up, or both if I'm looking into the sun. But it's amazing the difference when you put that shade over, and it's just like a little rubber piece. I think they cost like $30 or something like that. If I lost those on every hunt, I'd buy a new pair for almost every hunt. Like they're super, super crucial. So check those out if you haven't already. So we'll do two more quick questions here. Lots of really good questions in here, but we'll do a couple more. So do you glass from the top of a hill to get a better vantage point, or do you make sure you drop down a little so you're not silhouetted?
So that's a great question, man. I think that really depends on how far away I'm glassing. Because you don't really want to skyline yourself, right? If I am at the very top, I do try to put like a tree or something behind me. If there's no trees in the area, I will drop down like 10 15 feet, whatever it is, so the back of the mountain top is behind me so I don't stick out like a sore thumb. Because you would be surprised, dude, at like, oh yeah, there's a mule deer 600 yards away, and you get up to take a leak and then all of a sudden he's looking at you. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
yes, that's a great point, man. Yeah, go drop just down a little bit off that so you're not skylined.
Yeah, no, super good point that we didn't think to talk about. Okay, this one here I'll take. Where is the Terrain X and viewshed functions on the app? I probably should have explained that a little bit better when we were looking at it. It's a very new feature, new tool set for us, and right now it's only available on the computer, on the desktop version. So if you have the app, you can go on the computer, sign in, view the maps right there. Obviously, no additional charge or anything like that from our standpoint. And then all the scouting you do on the computer transfers to your phone. All the phone stuff you do in the field transfers to the computer. So when you're on the computer version, on the right hand side, there's a new button called Terrain X. That's what you'll click to get into that stuff. Only available right now on the computer. Who knows? Maybe down the road we'll have some stuff like that in the app as well. So last one here, Josh. How would a full moon affect your methods? Are you changing things up at all from a glassing perspective, knowing those animals are going to be potentially cruising more throughout the night with full moon?
Yeah, so that the bear for people that missed it, I told a story in the very beginning of this about a bear hunt that I just went on. The moon was very bright. Okay. When the moon is really bright, I think it is absolutely crucial that you are in your glassing spot early, because knowing that those animals are going to be walking around in the dark, well, in the dark under the moonlight, you want to really try to catch them going to their bed. And that's exactly what happened about a week ago in Idaho. Is I caught this bear as he was heading towards his bed in the very early morning, which I never really see bears in the early morning in the springtime. Okay, so the moon absolutely has an effect on that. The other thing that the moon does is it causes, in my opinion, what I've seen is it does cause a little bit of little bit more midday activity. Um, animals, a lot of times, if you don't catch them, they're going to bed early. Okay, because they can see in the moonlight. They're going to bed early, so they get antsy. So they get up in the midday and kind of walk around a little bit. So I will be like, I think like full moon days, I think it's hunting all day is like you need to be doing that on full moon days.
No, it's really good information. And yeah, I hear things that are like, oh, it's a full moon, it's not going to be good. Well, it's just different. You know, it might change things, it might change their movement a little bit, but I've had plenty of really good hunt days right in the middle of a full moon. So yeah, just different ways of going about things. So yeah, like I said, lots of really good questions tonight. Appreciate everybody jumping on, taking the time out of their evening to learn a little bit about glassing with Josh. One other thing, Josh, just because it's sitting here on my desk, tell folks a little bit real quick about your book, where to find it, what that's all about real quick.
Yeah. So I wrote a book called Becoming a Backpack Hunter. It's a beginner's guide to backpack hunting. It takes you from you don't even know if you want to backpack hunt all the way to you're packing an animal out back to the truck. Everything in between there. The gear section is pretty big in there, and I really try to lay out almost an instruction manual for you to take this book if you don't know anything about it and be able to go do your first backpack hunt after you read it. If you're interested in that, go check it out on Amazon. Just search Becoming a Backpack Hunter and it'll pop up.
Sweet. Yeah, good stuff here. Like, oh, I see a comment there, link for a book. I don't know if we can get that super quick. But yeah, Becoming a Backpack Hunter on Amazon is where I found it as well. Super easy to find there. So really appreciate the time, Josh, and everybody. And good luck on spring hunts. Good luck on application season. Hopefully everybody's drawing good tags. You're going to draw that mountain goat tag, and then I'll come help you class up some.
Yes, that's what's going to happen.
Awesome. Also, book link is in there. So somebody on the back end drop that in there real quick. So appreciate it. Take care and good night, everybody.
Thanks, guys.